Chapter 1. Glass dolls do not cry. The city below was a living circuit board, neon veins pulsing between black towers, electric arteries moving synthetic life from district to district. From the 68th floor of Kendach's executive arcology, the world looked small enough to own. And from behind the reinforced glass, a little girl believed her family already did. Akiko Nakamura was born into light that never dimmed. Artificial dawn at 6, simulated night at 22, filtered air that smelled of citrus and antiseptic. Even laughter echoed differently here, thin, precise, like an error tone on a clean system. But Akiko still laughed. She sang to her reflection in the window, twirled in polished corridors until her shoes squeaked, and pulled faces at her shadow on boardroom glass. Her mother, Rieka, corrected her softly in public. A. Nakamura must always appear composed, and punished her wordlessly in private. Stillness drills, knees locked, hands flat against thighs, eyes on a single point until the ache in her back turned to fire. Her father, Daesuk, spoke in quarterly cadence, posture, diction, projection, lineage. They were sculptors and she was marble. Their touch never trembled. At 6, she learned to bow at a perfect 45 degrees. At 8, she corrected her tutor's grammar and was made to stand motionless by the panoramic window until the sun program slid from morning to late afternoon. At 10, she watched a shipment schedule appear on the wrong ledger and disappear from the right one. The word logistics gained a taste, expensive bourbon over blood. Don't romanticize the city, Rieka would say, seeing Akiko's forehead pressed to the glass. It's just chemicals and light. Akiko did anyway. The dollhouse. Childhood was rationed like vitamins, administered and monitored. Piano at 7, etiquette at 8, finance modules at 9, speeches recorded and reviewed for flaws of temperament. A camera watched her do homework. Another watched her sleep. A third watched the first 2. The punishments were elegant. A single fork placed 1 centimeter off-center on a dinner table and left there until she corrected it. A dessert withheld not because of grades, but because her smile had been too wide. Hands held under cool water to steady the nerves after a failed presentation. No marks. Nothing an outsider could name. Only the message, your body is a device you do not own. When she disobeyed, the consequences wore silk. Her mother's voice never rose. Her father never needed to touch her. Doors simply failed to open. Media access quietly throttled. Hologame privileges revoked. On her 8th birthday, the elevator stopped 1 floor shy of the rooftop garden and stayed there for an hour while Rieka explained the difference between wanting and deserving. Be still, Akiko told herself when the walls felt too close. Be small, be perfect. Then they can't see you breathing. But perfection invited more eyes. Once late at night, voices bled through the office door she was never to open. Her father's tone, pleasant. The words, knives, syndicate names disguised as partners. Deterrence disguised as compliance. Her mother laughed, warm, polite. A chill crept into Akiko's bones that hot showers didn't chase away. The next morning at breakfast, Rieka asked about piano fingering with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Daesuk forwarded a training schedule to Akiko's optic without looking up. The message tag read, mandatory. The academy. The Kendachi Corporate Academy was less a school than a foundry. Children of executives marched through modules under fluorescent hum. Finance, marketing, corporate law, speechcraft and etiquette, then the other track. A wooden sword fit Akiko's hand like it had been waiting there. The first strike sent a tremor up her arm that felt like truth. She liked the weight, the line from heel to wrist, the clean geometry of a proper cut. Pain came next, and she found she didn't mind it. Bruises meant she'd done something real. Again, the instructor said, emotionless. Again, again, again. Eyes forward. Breathe on the strike. Stop when I say stop. In the mirror-lined dojo, she learned to love the moment just before the blade halted. Control held to the edge of disaster. Her body obeyed when her mind stopped arguing. Precision was freedom, and freedom tasted like the one thing she controlled that no one could take, when to stop. The academy layered disciplines. Grappling, disarms, close quarters knives, presentation polish. And then the psychological track, group drills designed to erase the self from the team, praise that never quite landed, consequences that arrived 3 days after the infraction so you understood it was not anger, but system. They taught her how to sit through humiliation without looking away. They called it resilience. She called it practice dying. By 12, the silly, singing child showed up only when she was alone. By 13, even alone felt supervised. She started closing her eyes in showers and pretending the water, at least, didn't belong to anyone. On the mat, she grew faster, sharper. Instructors stopped correcting and started timing. She hit a point where hesitation felt like a stain she could scrub away with repetitions. Some nights her arms shook too hard to hold chopsticks. She learned to eat left-handed and hid her right. Control is survival, the academy taught. Control is pleasure, her body learned. Static on a forbidden channel. It happened at 14, between modules. A locked feed opened in a hidden folder on her school terminal, someone sloppy or someone kind. Headlines, old footage, urban myths, black-and-white video of a man moving through smoke with both hands steady, a voiceover that didn't name him because it didn't need to. Morgan Blackhand. The first clip was grainy and short, a firefight on a rooftop. The man moved like the geometry Akiko had been taught, only freer. No permission needed. The second clip showed after. He holstered. He walked away, not toward a debrief, a boardroom, apparent just away. She watched in the glow of a terminal that thought it was sleeping. Again. He's not owned, she thought, chest tight with a hunger she didn't have words for. He breathes because he decides to. After that, she found other fragments. Interviews carefully edited by networks, eyewitness rumor feeds, amateur cuts of gunfire and silence. She wasn't interested in the guns. She was interested in the distance, how no one's leash reached him. One night she whispered into her pillow, "I'll be free," and flinched as if the walls could hear. They probably could. The fracture. The academy sharpened. Tests changed shape. Students were taken to experience labs, white rooms where lights dimmed until a heartbeat filled the air and authority spoke from everywhere at once. Sometimes the lights flashed bright and a voice whispered praise until it felt like a drug. Sometimes the floor dropped a centimeter and you grabbed for balance and learned that surprise could be installed in your spine. Each session ended with tea. Debrief. They taught her to mimic emotion as needed. They taught her that apology was a tool and remorse was a bug. At home, Akiko watched a classmate transferred after failing a compliance test. No one said expelled. No one used the word disappeared. Ryuka signed a document with perfect penmanship. Daesuk told Akiko it would be a lesson. "What lesson?" she asked, the blade of her voice too bright. "That you are fortunate," he said, and the word fortunate landed like a threat. She smiled and bowed, and went to her room and watched Blackhand footage until her eyes burned. Solo, she mouthed, the syllables a spell, not a title, a verb. Haruto Ishida. It didn't start with a touch. It started with a question. He found her in the training hall after hours, hands raw from Bakken strikes, uniform immaculate because imperfections had consequences. "You stay later than the others," Haruto Ishida said, leaning against the doorway like he belonged everywhere. His suit was understated, his age disguised by the soft lighting. "Discipline or defiance?" Akiko straightened. "Discipline, sir." Sometimes they're the same thing. A hint of a smile, not kind, knowing. He introduced himself as a mentor in strategic development. He asked about her modules, her ambitions. He said ambitions like the word wasn't a punishment. When she deflected with perfect corporate phrasework, he waved a hand as if brushing dust from silk. "Drop the script," he said softly. "Tell me what you want." No one had ever asked. She didn't answer that night. He didn't press. He simply left a glass of water by the practice rack on his way out. The next evening there was coffee. Later, tea. "You're wasted in presentation protocol," he said a week later, as if he'd been thinking about it all day. "You have edge. They're grinding it smooth." She excused herself, bowed, left. In the elevator, her hands shook. It was never just the words. It was the attention calibrated to the exact frequency of her hunger. He appeared when she finished training. He listened like listening was a gift. He told her old Kendachi stories, the unofficial kind. And when he spoke about the future, he said your path as if it were hers to choose. He was married. That fact existed like a painting in a hallway you walked past every day until you forgot it was there. He did not tell her she was beautiful. He told her she was wasted. It had the same effect. 16 is an age made of flammable material. One spark and there's a fire. She didn't think of herself as naive. She thought of herself as precise, and precision is a poor shield when someone learns your rhythms. She started sending him drafts of her reports, unofficially, on encrypted channels he provided. He returned them with comments, sharper, cut the line about team cohesion. He invited her to a quiet corner of a quiet lounge where executives gathered to celebrate deterrent success. He ordered club soda for her as if she drank in those rooms every night. When he asked about her family, he didn't ask the way tutors did. He asked like he wanted to know where it hurt. That must be difficult, he said gently, when she mentioned Ryuka's stillness drills. To be so controlled. He sees me, she thought, dizzy with relief and shame. He sees me and doesn't look away. One night after a training session that left her hands trembling, he kissed her. She replied. He started to slowly and gently undress her. She allowed it. Soon they were laying naked on the training hall floor, entwined on each other's bodies. He sees me and wants me. Later, she remembered this night, its ultimate teaching. Pleasure is control. When they left, he offered his sleeve for the elevator call button so she wouldn't smudge the panel with blood. That's not necessary, she said. It's considerate, he said, and she hated how her chest warmed at the word. They were careful, they were not cautious, two different things. Haruto never had to say mine. His attention said it for him. Rione. It took Rione Ishida 1 week to see what others pretended not to. Sharp eyes, sharper ambition. She built her place in Kendachi with a scalpel and the patience of a surgeon. When she confronted Haruto, she didn't shout. She rearranged the air in the room so breathing felt like asking permission. You humiliated me, her posture said. You endangered us, her silence added. Haruto tried charm. Rione countered with a ledger. Akiko didn't witness the conversation. She felt the aftershocks. Rooms cooled. Doors that opened for months began to require credentials she didn't possess. A rumor with her name in it changed shape every time it passed. Intern, protege, project. The word girl used like a weapon. Haruto overdosed a week later. Accidental, the report said, and the word echoed like a joke the city tells the same way every year. Rione inherited his holdings, including a boutique security firm with a clean white logo and an ugly soul, Shinsei Solutions. Before the ashes settled, Akiko received a single message, unsigned, unnecessary. You took what was mine. Now I take what was his. The system did the rest. Her mentors stopped replying. Her instructors started marking her promising but uncooperative. Ryuka's punishments shifted from stillness to disappearance. 3 days without scheduled classes or access to common areas, lost time she wasn't allowed to name. Daesuk's voice acquired an edge that meant the decision had already been made. You will apologize, he said at breakfast, not looking at her, slicing a piece of engineered melon with surgical precision. You will accept reassignment. You will learn. To what end? She asked, voice very calm, because she could feel control slipping, and control is how you live. So you can sell me smarter. Ryuka's fork paused. Daesuk's eyes finally met hers. For a moment she thought he might stand and slap her face, and some part of her wanted him to, because then at least it would be honest. Fortunate, he said softly, the way he had when her classmate disappeared. You are fortunate we still see potential. She smiled, because that was safer than bleeding in public. That night alone, she watched Blackhand footage until the shapes on the screen were just light and breath, and the idea of a man walking away because no one could make him stop. They can't own what they can't find, she thought. They can't leash what they can't touch. Fear came. It tested the windows. It whispered about the ground below. She let it pass through like a storm through a hard system, took stock of what she had, training, strength, a mind wired to notice every exit, a body that remembered where to stop. She packed a small bag, cheap street clothes bought with pocket cash for disguised drills, a cred stick she'd skimmed from a budget she was never supposed to see, a comb, a lipstick she had never yet worn. Then she slipped into the service corridors of the arcology and walked. The escape. She didn't run. Running is for prey. The elevator to the freight level required a maintenance code. She had learned it 3 years ago by watching an engineer's fingers and memorizing the rhythm. The door hissed open onto concrete and cold air. Cameras watched. She watched them back and stepped through their blind timings. The floor had a seam she'd noticed when she was 9. The seam led to a hatch. The hatch led to a service catwalk that smelled of oil and rain. The last door opened to night that wasn't a program. The air had texture down here, exhaust and spice and the intimate wet of real weather. Lights bled across standing water in colors the towers sanitized out of their decor. Ultraviolet, sickly green, flamboyant pink. The world sounded uncompressed. Laughter, anger, bargaining, music bleeding from 3 different doors. Voices overlapped like a language she didn't speak yet but understood. She stood for a long time, breathing until her ribs hurt. Don't cry, she told herself, and heard her mother's voice in the order. Cry later, she told herself, and heard Blackhand's silence in the permission. Somewhere in Kabuki, a sign flickered, violet neon drowning in rain. The club name did not matter yet. The light did. It painted her hands the color of bruises and made her feel visible in a way that didn't require permission. Her optic pinged with an incoming call from her father. She let it ring, then muted the world with a small gesture she'd learned from people who would have said no if they knew they were teaching her. The call died. The quiet after it felt like someone had removed a blade from her throat. She took a step, another. No one stopped her, which meant for this moment she was hers. First breath of the city. She found a pawn shop that smelled like solder and sweat and traded her school-issue datapad for a battered street phone and a knife that had been cleaned badly. She bought noodles from a woman with 3 gold teeth and a tattoo of the moon on her neck. The noodles burned her tongue and made her cry in a way discipline never had. Night City looked different from the ground. Bigger, closer, less glossy. She realized with the dizzy shock of someone switching gravity that she had never actually stood in rain without a roof between it and her. She tilted her head back and let it wash her clean. She needed a name that wasn't attached to a ledger. Yumiko arrived in her mind like a word she had always been about to remember. It sounded like a secret and a dare. It tasted like the edge where slice and dice would hum a few years later when the part of her that loved control learned to love the control of danger. Not yet. For now, she was a girl with precision for a heartbeat and hunger for a plan. She slept in a cheap capsule with a door that stuck and felt safer than all the unlocked spaces of the tower. She woke to the city trying to sell her things. She said no and meant it. She said yes only to the things that led to a stage, to an illusion, to a way to use the mask they had strapped to her face as a weapon she could finally aim for herself. She learned how to walk like prey and look like prize. She learned the hours a club asks for soft and the hours it pays for hard. She learned, without needing anyone to tell her, that the doll people buy is not the girl who breathes behind her eyes. From a kiosk selling bootlegs and legends, she bought an old chip with scavenged footage. Mercs in alleys, chrome saints in gunfire. A rumor named Morgan Blackhand walking away from an explosion like a man leaving a conversation he didn't like. She pressed the chip to her temple, in a capsule that smelled of cheap detergent and hope. Solo, she mouthed, touching her throat where her voice lived. Not for them, for me. Outside, the rain turned from hard to soft. Neon quivered in puddles. Somewhere not far away, a singer's voice climbed out of bad speakers and made the night lean closer to listen. Akiko stepped into the violet spill of a club's sign and felt the floor vibrate with bass, with breath, with the kind of life you have to move your body to catch. So this is what living feels like, she whispered to no one. Then she went inside.